Let's be real here, you and I, we're not surviving the French Revolution. I mean, we'd like to think we'd be smart enough to avoid trouble, but back in the 1790s, France was one chaotic place. People were losing their heads left and right, literally. I'm sure we'd both be part of the "oh no, guillotine time" club before the first act was even over. Now, don't get me wrong, we'd probably try to survive, we'd have good intentions, maybe even have some ideas on how to blend in. But the French Revolution wasn't just about blending in. It was like a social game of dodgeball, except instead of getting hit by rubber balls, you're dodging angry mobs with pitchforks and Marie Antoinette haircuts. So buckle up, my friend, because in this text, I'm going to take you on a journey through 18th century France and explain exactly why we wouldn't make it out alive. Spoiler, it's not just because we can't speak French. You don't speak French. Let's start with the obvious. You don't speak French. Sure, maybe you know how to order a croissant at a cafe, or say bonjour like a pro, but that's not going to save you when things get heated. Imagine you're standing in the middle of Paris in 1793. The mob is gathering and someone yells at you, "A bala monarchie!" Your response? Probably something like, "Oh, oui?" That's not going to cut it. In reality, what they just screamed was "down with the monarchy," which is an important slogan to get right when people are running around chopping off aristocratic heads. If you say the wrong thing like, "Oh, I quite like the monarchy actually," you're going to be in some serious trouble. The revolution was a time when knowing which side you were on wasn't just about picking a team. It was a matter of life and death. And if you don't even understand what people were chanting, well, let's just say you're going to get on the wrong side real quick. You'd be way too overdressed. Now let's talk fashion. If you're anything like me, you'd probably think, hey, if I'm going back in time to revolutionary France, I should dress the part. So you'd show up in one of those fancy powdered wigs, a waistcoat, maybe even a pair of knee-high stockings. After all, isn't that what everyone wore in France back then? Nope, wrong again. By the time the revolution was in full swing, dressing like that was like walking around with a neon sign that said, "Hi, I'm a rich aristocrat. Please feel free to hate me." The sans-culotte, which literally means without fancy pants, were the working class folks who didn't have time for silk stockings and frilly coats. They wore practical clothes like pants, not stockings. And they hated the aristocrats. So if you're rolling up to the revolution looking like you're ready for a royal ball, you'd probably last about 5 minutes before someone decides that you must be on the team Marie Antoinette. And let's just say that wasn't the winning team. You're not angry enough. One of the main reasons why you wouldn't survive the French Revolution is simple. You're just not angry enough. The people of France had a lot to be mad about in the late 1700s. High taxes, food shortages, and a king who seemed more interested in hunting and locksmithing than running the country. Yes, Louis XVI was really into making keys. Meanwhile, the Queen, Marie Antoinette, was off throwing expensive parties and, as the legend goes, telling people to eat cake when they couldn't even afford bread. Now, let's be honest. You've probably had a bad day or two, but are you French Revolution angry? Like, I'm ready to storm the Bastille and overthrow the entire system angry? Probably not. Most of us are more, I'm mildly irritated when my phone dies angry. And that's just not going to cut it when you're up against a mob that's ready to turn the whole country upside down. In revolutionary France, anger was the currency. If you weren't mad about something, people would start to wonder if maybe you were part of the problem. And if you're not part of the solution, you're going to end up on the wrong side of the guillotine. You'd be terrible at Revolutionary War. Oh, did you forget about the wars? While the French Revolution was busy with head chopping, it also sparked conflicts with countries like Austria, Prussia, and Britain. They were thinking, if the French can revolt, so can we. So you'd find yourself on the battlefield armed with a musket that took ages to reload. Seriously, by the time you were ready to fire, your enemy would have taken a nap and planned their next attack. Battles back then were chaotic. Think dodgeball, but instead of rubber balls, you're dodging cannonballs and charging cavalry. You might think, I'll just keep my head down. But revolutionary armies often had commanders who were as clueless as they were enthusiastic. Imagine following a guy who trips over his own sword while yelling, "Charge!" Not the best strategy. And let's not forget the food. You'd be lucky to get stale bread and moldy cheese. If supplies ran low, you might end up eating grass or small critters. Yum. You'd say something stupid at the worst possible time. Picture this. You're standing in a crowd during a heated revolutionary debate. Everyone's arguing about how to deal with the king. Some want to keep him alive as a symbol. Others want to chop off his head. and there's a lot of yelling. You're trying to keep a low profile because, let's face it, you don't want to end up in jail or worse. But then, you say it, the one thing that no one in revolutionary France wanted to hear. Well, I think maybe we should just give the king a second chance. Oh no, you've done it now. Everyone turns to look at you, eyes wide in disbelief. It's like you just said, "I love Mondays," at a work meeting, or "pineapple belongs on pizza" to a group of Italians. You just made a huge mistake. In 1793, making a casual remark in favor of the monarchy was like asking for a one-way ticket to Guillotine City. People weren't in the mood for second chances. They wanted change, and they wanted it now. So, while you might think you were being reasonable, revolutionary France was not the time or place for reason. It was a time for passion, drama, and well, not getting yourself executed. You'd try to fix the revolution. Maybe you're one of those people who loves a good challenge. You think, okay, I can survive this. I'll just stay out of trouble, keep my head down, and maybe even help the revolution along. Bad idea. The French Revolution was like a wild, unpredictable roller coaster, and the last thing you want to do is hop in and start pulling levers. You might think you're helping, but guess what? The revolution had a way of turning on people, faster than you can say Vive la France. Just ask Robespierre. He was one of the main guys in charge of the revolution for a while. He helped lead the whole Reign of Terror thing, where thousands of people were guillotined for not being revolutionary enough. But eventually, the revolution got tired of Robespierre too. One day, he was running the show, the next day, he was running from the guillotine. So if you think you can waltz in and fix things, you're in for a rude awakening. The revolution didn't care about your plans. In fact, trying to take charge or make improvements would probably just paint a giant target on your back. You don't have a revolutionary nickname. Here's a fun fact. During the French Revolution, people loved giving each other dramatic nicknames. You couldn't just be Jacques from down the street anymore. No, you needed to be Jacques the Revolutionary Hammer, or Jean-Marie the Guillotine's Shadow. If you didn't have a cool, intimidating nickname, how was anyone supposed to know you were serious about overthrowing the government? Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not exactly great at coming up with tough-sounding names for myself. You'd probably end up with something like Greg the Confused, or Marie the Mildly Concerned. Not exactly going to strike fear into the hearts of your enemies, is it? And if people didn't think you were serious, they'd start to wonder if maybe you weren't revolutionary enough. And if there's one thing you don't want in revolutionary France, it's people thinking you're not revolutionary enough. That's how you'd end up with a date with Madame Guillotine. You'd get lost in all the different factions. One of the most confusing things about the French Revolution was all the different political factions. You had the Jacobins, the Girondins, the Montagnards, and a whole bunch of other groups, each with their own ideas and how to run the country. Now, keeping up with all the political drama today is hard enough. Imagine trying to figure out back then, without Twitter or 24-hour news coverage. You'd probably be like, wait, who are we supporting today? Are we still mad at the king? Or is it the bread prices now? Should I be chanting liberty, equality, fraternity, or down with the Girondins? The truth is, by the time you figured out which faction you were supposed to support, that group would probably be out of power, and supporting them would be a big, big mistake. The revolution was a lot like playing musical chairs, except instead of losing a chair, you lost your head. The guillotine was really efficient. Speaking of heads, let's talk about the guillotine. This was revolutionary France's answer to the question, how can we make executions both fast and terrifying? If you've ever seen pictures of the guillotine, you know it's basically a giant sharp blade that comes crashing down and whoosh, off goes your head. It was fast, efficient, and the people loved it. In fact, the guillotine was such a big hit that thousands of people ended up getting their turn under its blade during the Reign of Terror. Now let's be honest. You and I, we wouldn't stand a chance. The moment we said something slightly off, dressed the wrong way, or didn't chant the right revolutionary slogans with enough enthusiasm, it would be guillotine time. And once that blade starts falling, there's no going back. You'd forget to pretend you hate cake. There's this famous myth that Marie Antoinette said, "Let them eat cake," when she heard that the people were starving and couldn't afford bread. Historians pretty much agree she never actually said that.
Are you sure about that?
But the damage was done. She became the symbol of everything wrong with the French monarchy. Rich, out of touch, and apparently really into cake. So here's the thing. During the revolution, people were kind of over cake. They were starving, and cake was seen as this symbol of royal excess. If you were caught enjoying a nice slice of cake in the middle of revolutionary Paris, people might start looking at you like, do you secretly miss the monarchy? Are you too fancy for bread? Before you know it, you're being carted off to prison for enjoying a harmless pastry. All because someone decided that cake equaled bad. You'd probably get tricked by a spy. Finally, let's talk about spies. The French Revolution was full of them. Everyone was spying on everyone else, trying to figure out who was secretly supporting the old regime. And let's be real, you and I would be terrible at spotting a spy. Some charming stranger would walk up to you and say something like, "So how do you feel about the revolution?" And because you're a nice person, you'd probably try to be polite and say something neutral like, "Oh, it's great. Very exciting stuff." Bam, you'd just be caught. That charming stranger? A spy. And now they're reporting you to the revolutionary government for being too lukewarm about the whole overthrow the monarchy thing. Oops. Conclusion. So there you have it, a detailed and slightly terrifying list of reasons why neither you nor I would survive the French Revolution. Between the angry mobs, confusing political factions, and fashion faux pas, it's clear that 1790s France was not the place for us. The good news? We don't have to worry about any of that now. Sure, we still have our own set of challenges today, but at least we don't have to dodge guillotines or pretend we hate cake. So the next time you feel like complaining about slow Wi-Fi or a bad hair day, just remember, it could be worse. You could be in revolutionary France trying to figure out which political faction you're supposed to support and desperately hoping that no one mistakes you for a royalist. Now excuse me while I go eat some cake.